Armenia's long-awaited high-tech strategy takes shape. Article by Toroyan, published on June 23, 2026, on EVN Report. The Ministry of High-Tech Industry has published the draft strategic program for developing the sector over the next 8 years. For many in the industry, this moment has been long overdue. Since the ministry was established in 2019 with a mandate to guide and grow the sector, one question has lingered in almost every discussion about Armenia's tech future. What exactly is the country trying to build, and how does it plan to get there? Now, that long-anticipated answer has arrived in the form of a strategic program that aims to bring structure to Armenia's high-tech ambitions. It sets out a vision, priorities, and policy tools for a sector that has grown quickly, often unevenly, and sometimes more through external shocks than deliberate strategy. The map is finally here. The first useful thing the draft does is almost embarrassingly basic. It defines what Armenia means by high-tech. This may sound obvious, even absurd, but it matters. For years, the term has been used loosely, sometimes meaning software, sometimes startups, engineering, or anything modern enough to pass for innovation. The document tries to end that ambiguity. It defines the sector across 4 main groups: high-tech manufacturing, covering products such as chemicals, pharmaceuticals, electronics, machinery, transport equipment, and medical devices; information technology services, telecommunications, and research and development. In other words, the document tries to define the sector's boundaries before prescribing how to develop it. That is a small but important move. Without knowing what is inside the high-tech box, it is difficult to measure the sector, design policy for it, or hold anyone accountable for its growth. The second useful move is that the draft does not stop at definition. It also says which parts of the sector Armenia should prioritize. After years of treating almost every promising technology as a national opportunity, the document introduces a more selective logic. It looks at the overlap between global technology trends and Armenia's existing capabilities, and, from that match, identifies 6 priority areas: artificial intelligence, data science and machine learning, software development, bioengineering and medtech, advanced engineering, and sustainable technologies. The list is still broad, and one could argue it leaves Armenia with many fronts to work on at once. But the draft also brings these areas under 2 larger umbrellas: AI engineering and intelligent digital systems, which brings together AI, data science, and software, and deep tech engineering, prototyping, and embedded systems, which groups advanced engineering, bioengineering, medtech, and sustainable technologies. This makes the direction feel less like a loose collection of trendy fields and more like an attempt to build connected capability domains. At the very least, the strategy begins to move the conversation from what sounds futuristic to where does Armenia have a realistic basis to compete? Another useful element is institutional. Strategies often fail, not because they lack ambition, but because no one is clearly mandated to carry them. They remain promising documents with weak implementation muscles. This draft seems to avoid that trap, at least on paper. A central role is given to the Armenian Innovation Foundation, a relatively new institution expected to help design and monitor some of the strategy's key policy instruments. That is important. If the foundation is properly resourced and given real authority, it could become the bridge between the ministry's policy vision and the day-to-day work of turning programs into functioning tools. More broadly, the strategy's real value is that it stops treating Armenia's high-tech sector as a miracle that will keep happening on its own. Instead, it treats it as a system that must be built through talent pipelines, R&D capacity, infrastructure, financing, international links, and the governance and institutions that connect these parts. The proposed 21 goals and 54 actions follow this logic. This is important because Armenia's tech growth has often been framed as something almost natural, powered by smart people, diaspora links, startup energy, and lucky timing. The draft offers a more sober message. Growth needs architecture. But this is also where the document begins to show its limits. It includes many of the right building blocks, yet it is less clear how they are meant to connect. The pathways between parts aren't fully connected. The action plan is comprehensive, and in many ways this is reassuring. It includes many of the right ingredients: talent development, curriculum reform, work-based learning, diaspora engagement, R&D financing, laboratories, technology transfer offices, proof-of-concept grants, venture instruments, export support, innovation outposts, regulatory sandboxes, and better monitoring. Taken together, these read more like a catalog of actions than the building blocks of one engine. Almost everything a high-tech ecosystem might need is present. What is less visible is the order in which these pieces should come, which ones are truly central, how one intervention is expected to unlock the next, and what trade-offs the government is willing to make. In other words, the draft understands what a modern innovation ecosystem should contain. But it is less clear on the sequence, hierarchy, and logic that would turn this long list of tools into a strategy. A related weakness is the balance between supply and demand-side actions. Most proposed measures strengthen the supply side: better skills, better curricula, more R&D capacity, stronger labs, more financing instruments, and improved commercialization support. These are necessary. Without talent, infrastructure, and capital, no high-tech ecosystem can grow. But supply alone does not create markets. The demand side, that is, who will test, buy, trust, and scale Armenian technologies, is less developed. The draft includes some demand-facing tools, such as export support, innovation outposts in global tech hubs, participation in international platforms, and regulatory sandboxes. However, these mostly help Armenian companies reach markets, rather than creating early demand for their products. The strategy would be stronger if it gave more space to demand-pull instruments, innovation procurement by the state, mission-based challenge programs in areas such as health, defense, agriculture, energy, and public services, pilot contracts with public agencies, corporate adoption schemes, and test beds where Armenian companies can prove their technologies with real users. For deep tech in particular, the key question is not only whether Armenia can build the technology, but whether someone will be ready to use it early, pay for it, and help it mature into a product that can compete beyond Armenia. There is also a subtler mismatch between the strategy's ambition and the actual structure of the sector it is meant to serve. Much of the action plan appears designed for fairly sophisticated firms, those already close to R&D, ready to use labs, apply for proof-of-concept funding, work with technology transfer offices, or move into deep tech prototyping. These firms are worth cultivating, and Armenia certainly needs more of them. But the strategy's own analysis shows they still make up a relatively small share of the broader, high-tech industry it defines. The sector is dominated by IT services, small and young companies, individual entrepreneurs, and firms facing much more basic constraints: weak product management, limited sales capacity, lack of entrepreneurial skills, poor access to first customers, little experience with international scaling, and difficulty moving from outsourcing to their own products. This does not mean the strategy should be less ambitious. It does, however, suggest that Armenia may need a two-level approach: one track for building frontier deep tech capabilities, and another for helping the existing base of companies become more competitive, product-oriented, and export-ready. Otherwise, the strategy risks further deepening the existing imbalances. The destination is still worth pursuing. Ultimately, the draft strategy is a serious and necessary document, even if it is not yet fully convincing. It gives Armenia's high-tech ambitions more structure by defining the sector, setting priority directions, identifying systemic gaps, and beginning to think in terms of institutions, capabilities, and long-term competitiveness. Its weakness is that it tries to hold too much at once, without consistently showing the sequence, hierarchy, and demand-side pull that would turn many useful actions into a clear path for transformation. But that may also be the point of a draft. It creates space for the industry, experts, and policymakers to sharpen the document before it becomes the country's roadmap. Armenia does not lack ambition in high tech. What it needs now is a strategy disciplined enough to turn ambition into capability, and capability into products, markets, and real economic depth.